Hello, I'm Matt Gillard, bringing you another edition of Capital Corner, your weekly news and views on what's happening here in Lansing, your state capital. While the legislature keeps plugging away and trying to get things done before they go on their summer recess, not a lot is happening on the early childhood front, but there has been a number of issues that the legislature's been addressing. The big news this week was around redistricting. This is the proposal or the process that the legislature has to do every 10 years based on the new census that's done on redrawing the congressional and legislative district maps for the state of Michigan. Obviously, this is a very contentious issue at times and a very political process that goes through. With the Republicans in control of both houses of the legislature and in control of the governor's office, it stands to reason that they're trying to draw maps that are favorable to Republicans. The Democrats would certainly do the same thing if they were in charge. But there is a lot of debate and a lot of negotiations going on how these maps will ultimately end up being drawn. And it certainly impacts everybody in their communities because a lot of people will change, their legislative districts will change, and perhaps even their congressional districts will change based on these new maps that ultimately are adopted. They have until November to get the process completed, but they'd like to get it done before they go on summer recess because there are expected court challenges that certain groups will bring to this process, and those take time as well. And so they're hoping to get that wrapped up next week. It looks like they're on track to do so. Further complicating that process is the fact that Michigan actually lost a congressional seat based on these census numbers. Our population has dropped in some of the southern states, and particularly the southwestern states, population increased. And so Michigan will go from having 15 congressional representatives in Congress in Washington to 14. So those maps will have to be drawn dramatically differently as well. So that's eating up a lot of the legislature's time right now. They are also focusing on some other issues. Some of the teacher tenure reform packages are starting to move through the legislature, and I expect that those bills will be finalized next week as well. They are looking at reforming the tenure system that we have for public school teachers in Michigan. This is obviously a controversial measure as well. A lot of debate happening on that, but it looks fairly certain at this point that there will be agreement between the House and the Senate on a final version that reforms teacher tenure here in Michigan. They're also continuing to look at ways to bring down employee health care costs for both state and local employees, local government employees. So a hard cap bill moved out of the House. There'll be more discussion on that. But these are two reform measures that I think they would like to get passed before they go on break. The one bill that was kind of related to early childhood does not look to be moving. That's a change bill, a bill I mentioned earlier that was introduced to change the mandatory start date or the allowable start date for kindergarten. It looks like that will wait till the fall, and we'll continue to work with folks in the legislature to make sure that any changes they do make to the kindergarten start date do address the needs of pre-K for those children and others. And so stay tuned for more on that. And as always, thanks for joining us for this edition of Capital Corner.